Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me on the podcast today is Shawna Percival, owner of Styleberry Creative Interiors. Shawna's 10-year design career started with a business, art, and media degree, and then grew into the popular Styleberry Blog of the late 2000s, and then became the flourishing design firm that Styleberry Creative Interiors is today. Shawna believes that an ordered, beautiful space is the fastest way to a family's harmony and happiness at home. And she's going to tell us more about that on today's episode. She also loves nothing more than bringing this to life for clients across her tight-knit community. She's a San Francisco Bay Area native, and she currently lives in San Antonio with her military physician husband and their 2 young children. When she's not designing, you can find her sweating it out at yoga, cooking in the kitchen, or sporting her signature hoodie. Shawna is a coaching client of mine who has serious determination and grit in chasing her dreams. What I loved about Shawna from the very first time I met her was she has a very straightforward, no-nonsense way of speaking and communicating, and I love that she owns her stuff. And so when she called me, she said, I really just want to know exactly where I am in my business, and I want to be able to use that to take me where I want to go. And let me tell you, this girl has done the hard work that I've asked of her to get the answers. And with this information, she cast a vision for where she wanted to go, and she's worked really hard to put a plan in place. And I'm telling you, she puts down her head and she gets busy. And honestly, in less than a year, she's where she wanted to be. I think it surprised her, and now she's dreaming of more, but within the balance of the life that she leads. So today, we both hope that you are inspired to put everything on the table in your business. Take a look at it, roll it over, see what still works for you. If it doesn't work any longer, say goodbye and replace it with new ideas, processes, and ways of doing business. You know, dreams are no longer dreams when they become your reality. Enjoy. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Shawna, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. So Shawna, just to give everybody fair warning here. So you and I work together.
Yep.
And we have been, oh gosh, how many months? I don't even remember. It was sometime in last year. So probably a good 6-8 months, maybe.
I think it was October.
Okay.
November.
So maybe around six to 8 months, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And we're going to just talk about like some of the crazy, wild ride that you have been on, the journey that you've been on as an inspiration story, if you will, because you're pretty new in business. Why don't you take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about when you started your business and about your business, what you do, employees, subcontractors. Just give us a picture of Styleberry Creative.
Okay, so I actually filed all my paperwork for business back in 2008. This was after I'd left my corporate job and I was transitioning to Texas, new state, new life. My husband was a resident and I needed something else to do. I wasn't happy in the corporate world. So I knew the creative side was in me. I had been writing a blog while I was working in the corporate world. And I started with the business called Styleberry Home. And initially that was color consulting and home staging. And then I caught the photography bug. And so I started doing some photography. And then I got pregnant after, a length of infertility. And I was blogging about that and really felt connected to blogging before blogging was even a thing. So the blog was kind of the start for me. And then I was really into that for a few years. And by the time my husband finished 6 years of residency and we ended up in fellowship, we were in a new city, and it was super overwhelming. And I shut everything down. No, I was done blogging. I was done with the business. I was focusing on being a mom to 2 little kids because I was pretty much solo at that point. My husband was non-existent. And then I focus all my energy on sprucing up my rental. And one day a friend of mine came over and she's like, oh my gosh, I love your house. You've been here for 8 weeks. You've been here for hardly at all. And it looks like this. And she's like, I'm not even going to give you the option. I'm going to pay you and you're going to come and transform my home. And that was my first real decorating. I would say it was decorating back then because there were no plans. There was nothing concrete. It was just decorating.
What year do you think that was? Do you remember?
That was in 2015.
Okay.
So 2015, I started with her project, which spun into another project, which spun into another project.
Sure.
And then we moved again. And we were back in Texas, and my husband's in the military, so we didn't have choice where we were going to go. We landed back in Texas. And
let's stop for a minute right there.
Okay.
So your husband's in the military.
Yes.
He is also a physician,
Yes.
which means he is gone all the time. I mean, really at work. He works a lot, right?
Correct.
Huge demands on his time.
Yes.
Not only from his work, but then from the United States, just being in the military, which means if they say get up and go, you get up and go with, as long as it's stateside and you can. Or maybe even not stateside. Wherever they put him is where you go.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Because I think we need to set that stage, because when we say that in some cases, when we talk about your journey later, young children, in some ways, and I don't mean to diminish it in any way, there's a lot of a single mom aspect to what you're doing with the demands on his time and the amount of time that he is not around. Is that, would you say that's the case?
I like to use the term solo mom because I'm not a single mom, because I definitely have a shared income. And so I think single moms deserve a special place.
I would agree with that. That's a great word. That's a great way to, that's actually what I was trying to get to. And I think that's a beautiful way to describe it. So you are solo parenting, if you will, a larger portion of the time.
Correct. And even now that, all the training years are behind us, he's still on call. So I don't have anyone I can call if my kids are sick. It's me. And while his job in no way defines me and my work, it definitely structures my life in a way that I can't ignore and is a big impact on my day-to-day.
Right. Okay, good. I just wanted to clear that up. And thank you for that new phrase. I really like that. And I like the respect that it also lends to those moms that are single in all aspects.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. But as we do talk about your journey, I think knowing that dynamic is also going to explain why you've made some of the choices in business that you've made.
Sure. I mean, I'm in a real vulnerable position because we could get orders and I could move. I mean, he's super specialized, so hopefully we won't. And San Antonio will be home for a good long time, but I can't plan on that. And that definitely impacts my business because I can't take some of the risks that I otherwise would take to make it permanent here, because I don't know that that'll always be the case.
Okay. So then stepping back, 2015, you go in, you do your home, which is a rental, I think you said. All right. Within like 6 or 8 weeks, your neighbors are like, wowed. They start calling you. And, it's funny. My business started the same way. I did window treatments for one person in my subdivision. And then I kind of went from house to house to house to friend to friend to friend. So it sounds like yours was similar. You did the first home and they told somebody who told somebody, and you start the decorating side, right? Is that what it was? Okay.
It was the decorating side. And I was so blessed. My first client is an entrepreneur herself. She's a woman who champions women. And to have her in my corner and giving me all the grace that I needed through this first project and telling me, okay, I'm going to pay you that, but when you go do this for other people, you need to triple it. Someone like that to have around you is what helps you grow. So she actually brought me on remotely, where she's texting me pictures today. We designed a huge kitchen for her, and her kitchen is getting installed today, which is amazing. So
how nice. Yeah. So that shows you, number one, it shows you did a great job, because here we are 4 years later, and now she's hiring at new rates At new rates, right? I mean, let's don't miss that. You're not holding those, you were my first client in 2015 rates. You're holding, I'm standing in my space 2019 rates.
That's right. And she's respected those rates and me as who I am and how my company has grown and what we do, which is also at a different level than what I did back then. This business has completely changed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So then you go do all these other houses. One leads to the next, and then what was the next step for you?
It was just a handful because
Okay.
I was hell-bent on not putting my kids in school till they were 3. So I was a mom 24/7 until that year when I started working on her project, and my son went to school 2 days a week. So I only had 2 days a week to do this. And I was, working a little bit, and then I knew we were going to move again. So I spent a lot of time in my closet office during that time, building my workflow. I was using a client management system back then, and I was setting up my process, and I wrote all my canned emails. I put together my workflows. I started automating before I learned how important automating was.
What do you think made you do that? Did you understand the importance of that all the way back from corporate, or what was it that made, because that's not where most people start, Shawna. You realize that. They don't usually start with, how can I automate? They usually start with, let me just go see what works for me, right? Kind of a little more graspy, if you will.
Yeah, my background before that was actually in pharmaceutical sales. So there was nothing automated about that. There was algorithms that we had to follow.
And processes. I mean, it
And
was
processes.
process driven. Yeah.
Sure. And I like order. I like having things in order. I like being able to talk through sales calls in order. So if I was going to get on the call and try and explain what I was doing to a new client, I felt like I needed to have A, B, C, D lined up on the back end.
Okay.
And to me, having a client management system that did that was crucial to my confidence in being able to sell it.
Oh, I love that. So having done those workflows, those processes, the client management systems, that in and of itself provided some level of confidence to walk out the door, because at least you had confidence that you had a process.
Yeah. But then I moved and I had nothing. I mean, I had to start over again. So we moved in the summer, and I wasn't sure what was going to come next. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure. We had kind of some weird things happen with our housing situation and wound up in another rental. Long story short, I started looking at fixer-uppers. I told my realtor there was no way I would go look at this house that was for sale around the corner. But I did go to the estate sale, and I told her it was just way too ugly. There was no way I'd ever consider it. But during the estate sale, I fell in love with the house, and I could see what it could become. It was meticulously maintained. It was perfect floor plan for our family. 3 weeks later, we bought the house.
Oh my goodness.
Total
That's
gut
funny.
job.
So it was, I'm not looking at that house. I'm not going in that house. You went in for an estate sale, fell in love with the house, and bought it.
Yes.
Okay.
Bought
So
the house.
here's what's so funny. My husband and I, for our first house, we looked for probably 5 months to try to find the right house in the right location. Bless our realtor's heart. We were young, and of course we had a little money and a huge dream. And I was so disgusted with looking at houses that when we pulled up into the house we ended up buying, I pouted. I sat in the car and crossed my little arms, and I said, I am not getting out and going in. I am done. Take me home. And Floyd, who was our real estate agent, he and my husband turned around and they're like, Michelle, please, just one more house. Just get out and look at one more house. And I was like, I'm not going in. It was like 9:00 at night. They're like, please, Michelle, just come into the house. We'll go through it quickly. I'm like, fine. I get out. We walk in. I hit the foyer. I'm like, this is it. I want the house. And they both looked at me like I had lost my mind. But something about walking in that home, even though we did the similar thing, I mean, we were ripping down wallpaper. It was the 80s, early 90s. It was crazy. But I remember walking in and having that feeling, oh my gosh, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I can appreciate the feeling, and I can appreciate the putting your little feet, your little heels in the sand and going, I'm not doing it. And then having to do pretty much a 180 there.
A 180. I mean, it was a 1950s home in original condition, orange brick. It had floral wallpaper everywhere. It had paneling. It had a Pepto-Bismol pink bathroom. It had
nice.
I mean, right down to the toilets were pink. So it had 13 different floors throughout the house. Every room had a different color carpet. But it was so meticulously maintained. And we went through the process with the sellers. Flippers wanted to buy it. They wanted to sell it to a family. They raised all their boys there. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. Saw that we were a military family. We ended up getting an incredible deal on the house that allowed us to gut it. I mean, we completely gutted it, which was an amazing process because I was able to learn San Antonio and learn where to get everything, where to go, who to align with, who to stay away from, and really pick people's brains in an honest way and experience firsthand the emotional experience that renovation is, because
Yes.
it's not something to take lightly. I mean, it impacts you
Or
deeply.
cavalierly, oh, good night, just get over it. It's not like that at all.
No,
It's very
it's
disruptive in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially when timelines aren't met and details are missed. And it was a tremendous learning opportunity. And I tracked the whole thing on Instagram. If you hashtag Reno by Styleberry, you'll see every step of my renovation, right from the day I signed for the keys. So it's all there, start to finish. I still haven't photographed the final thing, and we've been living there for 2-3 years now. Someday. It's a cobbler's daughter. My house is the last to get finished.
I hear that all the time. So you get your house going, and then and then how does that morph into this phase of your business?
By the end of my renovation, I had a pipeline of clients. And
from watching you on Instagram and what you've been doing, hey, again, like that that neighbor / friend, hey, come do this for me kind of thing.
Yeah, it was very organic. And San Antonio is a big, small town. You know, everybody knows everybody. And once you get into a little bubble where I live, like it's a very small, close-knit community. And word traveled and friends of mine became clients, which while that may seem sticky, it's always worked out really beautifully because I have the ability to separate friendship and business, I think, pretty successfully. And so the business has built, you know, year after year. It's just been built from the ground up in a very organic way. I often talk about marketing. You and I have talked about this. What's the best way to market your business? And every single client I have comes from another client. It's never, you know, just off the internet, usually. I mean, this week I think was the first week. I mean, I've had a lot of leads that have been random, but this is the first week I think I've booked a client. But even then, I can't say that because her best friend just bought one of my projects. So she's seen my work firsthand. So it's a small town here, and it's been a very organically growing business.
Very connected. So when you started Styleberry Creative, let's say this design piece after the reno of your project, all right, so that iteration of the company, I know you've talked about, you know, looking at metrics and doing all those things from your prior job in pharmaceutical sales. Did you come into this with, here's what I need to make, here's what I'm going to have as a profitability goal? Did you even define all of those things at the beginning, or were you still starting off with, I'm so excited to do this, let me do this, let me get my process down, I'll look at the money and how that works out later? How did you do that?
I think it was the latter. I know it was the latter to start. You know, I have the end goal. I had the end goal back at that time of being able to make enough money to send my children to private school. I wanted to cover their tuition by myself. And that was my number one driver. And if I hit that number, I told myself I'd be happy. But back then I had very little overhead. You know, what I made after taxes was what I got to keep. I didn't have employees. I didn't have software like I have now. I didn't have all the contractors that I have now.
It was a lean and mean operation, right?
It was super lean. Yeah. I mean, it was very profitable from the start because I didn't have to pay anybody else, but I very quickly got very overwhelmed and learned the limitations that working solo had on my big dreams.
So at what point in your business did you bring on help? And what was some of the first people that you brought on to help you?
So I started working with another business coach, and it was an interesting experience. And I think that I made some emotional decisions right from the get-go. I understood the business plan. One of the big things that impacted me right off the bat was a book called The E-Myth. And I recommend the E-Myth to anyone in business because for me, basically, I think we've talked about this before, but it lays out that business triad, right? Where you have the visionary at the top of the company, you have the manager who's running the business day to day, and then you have the technician who's doing the work of the business.
Right.
And looking at that model and understanding the gifts of each of those three roles and what I tend to lean towards, what I was willing to outsource, and what I truly needed to outsource in order to not limit myself is when I decided to make a shift.
Okay.
So I think I came to you. By the time I got to you, I was so hesitant about the finances, but I had already essentially been urged to hire someone by this other coach.
And kind of committed to that other person at that point.
Part-time at least. Yeah. I brought her on part-time during the summer, and beautiful Instagram brought my lovely designer my way. And she was fresh out of school and had a design degree. And I brought her on part-time over the summer to see how things would work. And she has been such a gift to my business and to me personally. I really enjoy working as a team with her. So
let's talk about that process just for a minute, not in any way to slam any other coach or what they're doing. But I do think sometimes we do have to be kind of pushed out of the nest and pushed to do things. So there is something really great at having a mentor, an accountability partner, someone on the outside looking in, going, come on, you can fly, jump, jump, jump. Yeah. But there also needs to be that other side of it, at least in my estimation, which is what you and I started working with, was, okay, I've been told to hire, and I stepped out on faith and hired, but I don't know if I can afford to maintain, sustain, or keep this person. And so there has to be that balancing act. We can't just hire them because we have work that needs to be done. We have to do it with the financial goal in mind of how am I going to pay them, how am I going to sustain that, and how are they going to make money for the company. And that was kind of the piece that you didn't have when you hired that made you feel maybe a little off kilter there. Would that be fair?
I think that's fair. You know, what I did have is I had the job description. I had all the tasks that she needed to do. I had divided exactly what the job looked like, what the role looked like, the proper contracting. Like, I knew exactly the structure of the business. What I didn't know is the dollar signs attached to that. What I did know is that I had a huge pipeline ready and waiting for me. So if I needed to take less of a salary to take her on, that was a risk at that time I was willing to take, because in the startup phase, I think you do have to take risks before, you can pay yourself handsomely.
Right.
And I still believe that. And I still to this day think that I would, I have a big financial plan with goals.
Right.
Very responsibly made, thanks to you. But I still know deep down, if we run into trouble, I'm never going to compromise her salary. I'll cut my salary before I'll cut her salary. So.
And I do think, when we started working together, and the reason I wanted to kind of just dig into that a little bit is there are people who will be listening to this podcast that somebody's going to tell them to go hire.
Yeah.
And they're going to either think, I know I need the help, and I've got a job description, or I have those things. But we truly do need to look at the financial side of it. And yours came out really well because you were so buttoned up everywhere else. But other people who are given the advice to just go hire because you're swamped or busy, or because you need to have a technician to free you up to do the manager visionary, whatever that reason may be, if we don't have a financial plan to support it, there's no company that can sustain long-term without a financial plan to support their employees.
No.
Right? And so we just need to know we have to do more than have the job description. But we have to at least start there too. We can't just go get a financial plan, I can pay them, and not have a job description and a plan for how they're going to fit in the company. So it's both sides of the coin.
Right. And I think in my situation, everyone came into the picture when I needed them. Because if I would have met you first, you would have been like, nope, you're not hiring anybody. This is not going to happen for you.
I would have said, lay out a plan. We might have hired her, but we might have hired her 3 months later after the plan was laid out. Or who knows? I mean, who knows? It may have worked out well. So you're right. Everybody comes in when we need them with what we're looking for. But ultimately, it was your responsibility to run your company, not mine, not any other coach or advisor or mentor or friend, right? It's Shawna.
It is. And as things have, shaken out over the last 6 to 8 months, I have stepped into the visionary and manager role, and those are my jobs. I still have a very heavy hand in the design, but she is the technician. She's doing a lot of the drawings and she's part business assistant as well. And it wasn't until you and I worked together and reverse engineered exactly, I mean, we have it down to exactly how many hours I need to work per week and bill out per week per each of us, how much product I need to move per week. And you better believe that we both have copies of those, and those are up in my home office. So I know whether or not I have hit that goal. And we sit down, and I'm maybe more open with the numbers than most business owners are with their employees, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to sit here and hoard profits. If we grow at the rate that we're continuing to grow, I'm going to share that success with my team. And if she sees the numbers and she knows where we need to be, and she is able to consistently hit the goals that we're setting, then it's clear for everyone what their job is. It's clear for everyone how we grow.
So, with your background in pharmaceutical sales, certainly you had sales goals. You had territories, you had numbers you needed to meet. And I think having those numbers are actually freeing. Some people might think that that feels weighty. I think it's freeing because it now tells me, keep going, keep striving. And if I've hit it, then I can take a breath. But I also know that by working at it, it's freeing to know that if I work the plan will work, if that makes sense, right? And I remember the moment that we were sitting down and going through your numbers, reverse engineering, all the way down to, your assistant, and when we could even hire on another person or even an admin person, really talking about what's billable, what's not billable, and hours, and what is an average rate, and what is her rate, and what is your rate, and But when you go through and we do that work, I mean, your eyes, it's just like, oh my goodness, like this is something that it's a detail that you can really follow. It is a financial plan that leads to the financial goal that we set. And it blows me away how many business owners don't do some version of that in their company. And it's not because they can't. I don't think that they've maybe thought to do it that way, right? It's more about the creativity. But we could even break it down, and you and I've even talked about this. How many full house projects can we do? How many one-off, one-day decorating things can we do? Or whatever that, I'm going to put in air quotes, packages or service offering would be. We can start to break it down and really go, you only need 1 lead a month. You only need to do 10 hours a week consistently for 48 weeks at this rate, and you're done. And if you know you need to do that, by golly, you are going to track your time to see if you can hit that. And you are going to work an extra hour. My fitness instructor has been challenging us this month to walk 10,000 steps a day. Got my Apple Watch here that's, showing. I can tell you, if I get to 9,500, I'm not going to go sit down. I am going to find a way to walk around my house for 500 steps to get to 10,000 because I know it's within sight. But if I didn't see the number, I could easily assume I'd made it and go sit down and I'm missing my fitness goals. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And I think one of the big traps that new designers fall into is asking around for what to charge. Mm-hmm. Or I asked my prior coach, what do I charge? What do I charge? What do I charge? And I thought that there was this magic number that someone's going to say, a bathroom costs $1,500 and that's what you need to charge. And everyone else in your area is charging this much. So yeah, you should charge that, when the reality is it's math. It's just math. You sit down and you figure out how many weeks a year you're going to work, how many hours a week you're going to work, how many projects, what your rate is. And it's overwhelming in the sense that it is math, but it's also very freeing when you see the math.
Yeah, it's the same kind of work of saying, I have a budget to buy furniture for a client's home of this amount. How am I going to best use that money? I mean, it's a similar type of thought process.
Yeah.
So, Shawna, one thing I want to make a comment about and ask you your thoughts. What do you think has been the biggest challenge to you in this, I would say just within the last year maybe, of growing this business from you by yourself to taking on a part-time employee to now we have her as a full-time employee and your pipeline is still full. Mm-hmm. And I know from the fact that you sent me your first quarter numbers that you are like killing this year, right? I mean, we set some pretty hefty goals this year. And you're killing those goals because you're doing it with intention. I mean, it's not luck. I think a lot of this, I'm not saying that there's not some blessing and grace going on, but you're out there intentionally working the plan that you have created, a day, a moment at a time. What's been the biggest challenge? If you were to think a year ago, like beginning of 18, you by yourself, no employees, almost mid 19, a full-time employee, you're outside of your home now in a space, like.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest challenge for me is breaking the mindset that has been created in my home life, which is I'll do it myself. I can do it myself. I can do everything myself. The biggest challenge for me has been letting go and asking someone to do things for me, because I have never in my life ever before asked someone to do something for me to the capacity that I am right now. I scrubbed all my toilets. I mowed my lawn all by myself, all the way through med school years, through residency years, through fellowship years. But as I've started to work, I've been able to let go of those 2 household chores. And then as it comes to the business, we have a pretty robust chart, and we use Asana to manage all of the back end of the business. And right there, I've listed every single task. And you've encouraged me to do this too. All the things that I am doing that I probably shouldn't or don't have to be doing in order to free up the time that is more profitable for me. And just starting to let go of those things. And it's hard for me because I have a DIY background, and I pride myself in not asking anyone to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. But when you get to the position where you're leading a company, you're going to fail if you do everything yourself and you insist on doing everything yourself, because then you can never grow. You can only do what you can create. So I have come to the point where I realize what my role is. I have learned my limitations, and I have been able to ask for help from my employee. I've got contractors truly all over the world. And these people are helping me with my guidance and my vision. They're helping create what's on the table right now.
Yeah, because the collective can do more than any individual. Mm-hmm. Right? So I was looking over at my bookshelf. There are a couple of books that I want to recommend that talk about exactly what you were talking about. One of them is called Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. And that's the same author that wrote Profit First. But Clockwork talks about finding the queen bee role, like how to make your business work like clockwork, how to automate, how to have consistently, and what do you need to do as the owner that only you can do. So when you made the comment about I don't want to hand off anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. It's not that you're not willing to clean the bathroom. It's that you can no longer clean the bathroom. But if you had to, you would be willing to do it. So I think sometimes we mix up the idea of willingness and time to do it, right?
Yeah.
This isn't about you being willing, because you have been, you've done it. It's about, I need to maximize my time at this point. The other book is The Stop Doing List by Matt Maloof, and I'll put all of these in the show notes. But the Stop Doing List is very similar to Clockwork. It's about delegating, handing things off, getting them off your plate, not being the one who has to do it. I love the book by Napoleon Hill that talks about the mastermind, right? Because that is what this idea of all of us is a bigger idea than any one of us by ourselves. So this idea that to grow a business, to truly create a company, we need more than just us. And it's not always easy. And then, of course, we have E-Myth, which says, good old Michael Gerber here, this is what it looks like. And I will say that when we first start, we may have to wear all 3 of those hats. We may have to be that entrepreneur, visionary, and the manager, and like the employee / technician. So we may have to be, I think in one of his first examples, we may have to be the baker who bakes the pie and the one who thinks about how we're going to get it out into the community, as the entrepreneur, and the manager who's keeping up with, did we wash all the pots and pans, and did we get our inventory in, and did we order it? So we're going to have to do all that at the beginning,
right?
If nothing else, to define it. And then we start to delegate it. And I would also suggest that when we delegate it, if we educate the people that we're delegating it to and we empower them, right? There's not enough to delegate and then pull back. We've got to delegate. We have to educate them. We have to empower them to make decisions. And then we have to trust them. And we have to be okay knowing that there are going to be mistakes. But if we can get them to buy into our why and our company values and know why we do what we do, why Styleberry Creative does what it does, then they're going to come around and ultimately they're going to learn how you think. They're going to make similar decisions to what you would make because they feel empowered as if it's their own company. And then the beautiful thing that you said about if we're profitable, we're all profitable. So when you start sharing some of the profitability with those who were involved in creating it, they feel even more a sense of ownership. It's not a you and me, it's an us. And I do think that's a beautiful thing about the firm that you're creating.
It's been fun. And the one thing that I still hesitate with is turning it into a robotic business. I think there's a real fine line between automation and becoming robots. And there are a lot of people who outsource their marketing. There are a lot of people that now I'm seeing more and more often. There's an outsourcing of Instagram and an outsourcing of Facebook and Pinterest. And something that one of those things that I still have not let go of is that direct connection that I have on Instagram. And I don't ever want this to become so automated that I'm out of touch and not the primary contact. It's still very important for me to be the first phone call. It's still very important for me to be on site during every first visit. It's still very important for me to be the voice behind Instagram. So I can directly communicate with those who choose to welcome my feed into their life. And that's where the growth causes me pause. How big do I want to be? How big does this business need to be in order to serve my soul and to feed my family? How much money do I need to make before it becomes too much? Before I'm worn thin.
Yeah. So I can't remember if you were the one that I had this conversation with. I've had it with about 3 clients in the last 2 weeks. And the question has been, how much is enough?
Yep.
When am I going to be okay with this, right? I think we had it, and I know I had it. I'm thinking of a couple of the clients. We had it just this week. And it was this idea of, what age and stage are my children in? Are my parents in? Where am I in life? And so I don't think there's a hard number that says, again, like this is what it should be or shouldn't be. I think it is very individualized for each person and each family and their goals and all. But I think I mentioned it to you. There's a Bible verse that says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And, there are multiple ways that we can look at that verse. But one of them that has really been, I would say, speaking to me this week is, like, I'm trying to build a great business, right? And I'm trying to make sure that I have enough money to fund my retirement, to invest in the things that I want to invest in that I think are important in this world, to have a salary to come home, all of that. But not at the expense of my health, not at the expense of no relationship with my husband and my children, not at the expense of not having friendships with other women or activities that are outside of business. Like, I don't want to be a one-dimensional woman that they're like, she was a great business owner and she made great money. And yeah, Michelle was profitable, but she had no friends. Her children didn't speak to her. Her husband barely knew she was around. They lived separate lives. I mean, that's just not what I want. And some people might want that. That's not what I want. And so trying to find that line, I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I think everybody has to find what that is for them. And I know even for me, leaving corporate, coming home, starting my business with children, I had a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old when I started. And I have kind of put boundaries around my business all along. I could go while they were in school, kind of like you mentioned with yours. I could do, 2 hours here and 2 hours there. And then it grew as they grew. I remember when mine got to middle school and I was like, yeah, I get like from 7:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You know what I mean? I just gained an extra hour a day so that I could put it into the business. And then by the time they got to high school and had after school activities, I'd have a full work day.
Yeah.
But why don't you share a little bit with the listeners how you've structured yours? Because being, doing a lot of solo parenting, having a firm where you are now outside of your home, you have a full-time employee, so you have more than just your family to think about from a business perspective. I know it's also important to you to be there for your children. I mean, it's and a necessity. Tell us a little bit about how you've structured that.
Okay. Well, my structure, I think, whenever you talk about a household that has a dual income partnership at the top, you have to really think about work hours, one person's work hours versus the other person's work hours, and share family responsibilities as well as the business responsibilities. And my husband is a heart surgeon. So when his phone rings, he's got to go. And when I can never count on him to be home. I never know what's going to happen during the day. So for me, between, when the kids are my responsibility is essentially what I'm saying. And that's all but maybe 1 or 2 weekends a month.
So if they're ill, they're sick, you're the one home with them. Like, it's not even an option. Say, honey, call in sick, and please tell those 3 heart patients that you won't be in because your son has a fever. Like, that's not an option.
Can you imagine
No.
canceling your heart surgery because your husband had to stay home sick from work? I mean, it's, or I guess your physician stay home from work. Out of respect to just the structure of his career and the neediness of the kind of work that he does, I'm in. So for me, what that looks like is my work day starts after I drop my kids off at school. And my kids are introverts just like me. They don't want to be at school any earlier than they have to. And they want to come home and have their quiet time immediately when school is over. So that means that my work day starts after I drop them off at 8:15. That means that most days I pick them up at 3:15. And that is when I get the core of my work done. Now, I do have overflow. So that overflow sometimes means I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and, a couple days a week I'm working before they get up, and a couple days a week I'm working after they go to bed. And some days are busier, some days are less busy, and summer is a whole nother ball of wax. But basically my work day is the school work day, and I work directly with clients. Most of my clients are professionals. A lot of them are, also the kind of people who structure their lives to be around their children. I work with a lot of physicians. There's a lot of call days where they're, off, or post call days when they're home. And we share similar values. And so I make sure that my clients know up front. They may get a 5:30 a.m. email from me, but they will not get an email after 3. So, that's kind of how I structure my work day to make sure that everything gets done.
So you structure not only your time to work, but you structure the communication with your clients to tell them, like, here's the timelines that I might, or, the parentheses of time that I might be talking to you. But you also structure the family feeling and understanding of how you choose your ideal client and for your team. I mean, your design assistant, your other designer, she knows that if you're sick or your children are sick, you're going to be with them. And so you've created even an understanding in your corporate culture.
Yes, for sure. My kids have all but one Friday off in April right now because of school conferences, and San Antonio celebrates Fiesta, which all the kids get one Friday off during Fiesta. And then we have, the Friday before Easter. And so it's 4-day work weeks right now, which is crazy. And I'm losing my mind, but we're getting through it. Because I am working overtime or, early in the morning and here and there when I can. And B, because we plan our weeks, and I have my designer, she's tasked out. We have a meeting, so she knows what she's doing. I make sure if I'm not working, I make sure that she has her day planned out. So she's prepped and has everything she needs, so she won't need me to do it.
Right. And Shawna, I want to put this on the table for us to talk about for a second too, because you have come a long way in a year. I mean, even from the time we've been working together, looking at the financials, getting some things cleaned up, getting you onboarded and different, like with bookkeepers and accountants and all those things that we're really watching out now for your behalf. But I want to commend you. And I also want to point it out, because I think sometimes when we talk about really being able to own our business, and you and I chatted about this before we came on the air, when you came to me, and this is why you're an ideal client for me. I'm just going to give a shout out to my ideal clients. Here's what I loved about what you said. And this is why I knew the minute we were talking, like, I can work with her and I can turn this thing, help you adjust it to what you want. And here's how I knew. You were like, here's what I've done. I own every bit of it. I take full responsibility and everything goes on the table. Like, I'm not holding back anything. And when I say anything, and I haven't led the charge on all of this. You've led the charge on a good portion of it by yourself, right? But we've had discussion. But you have changed in some ways. We've increased your rate. Yep. We've changed some pricing models. We've changed when and how we take money, how cash flows through the company. We've created company budgets that we didn't have before. We've created financial plans, financial goals. You are in the process of reworking a website. You have redone your logo and branding. We have reworked your ideal client. I mean, that's a lot of work in 6 to 8 months.
It is. But what's funny is it doesn't feel like it shouldn't be happening this way. It feels like this is just the way it's all supposed to be. One thing has led to another, and that goes right back to the fact that I like to have everything in order. I like to have A, B, C, D lined up, because to me, I don't feel like I can sell it unless I understand exactly what I'm selling. And to me, if I'm going to be full service luxury design, I need to have my bookkeeper lined up. I need to have my process nailed down. I need to have my automation, my canned emails, which we are also restructuring our entire automation system. So we've left 17 hats and are moving to Dubsado. And Dubsado is super robust. And so I'm learning it and my designer is learning it. And it's going to help us in the long run. But boy, it's a steep learning curve. So, we've switched that. Like you said, the website is getting a rebrand. I've decided to add interiors to the name. So I've been doing all of the legal paperwork on the background. I don't think you know this, I've been working with a new attorney, and I have like a formal master services agreement with statements of work attached. And so everything is up leveled. Buttoned up and up leveled. So
insurance. Yeah, right. All of those things.
Everything.
I remember I remember all of our coaching, but I remember 2 days, 2 different coaching appointments in particular that in my estimation, shaped the willingness to throw everything on the table and look at it. Mm-hmm. And not that you weren't willing before, but I think this almost made it like it just organically was happening. And I remember there were 2 days, and the 2 things that we talked about, one was your why. Yep. We really dug down into what was your why. And I mean, we dug. And I remember when we together sat down and I said, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm getting from everything you're saying to me. You just sat there like almost with your mouth open and like, oh my gosh, that's it. And like all of these instances from your life and all of the ways, the order that you like, all of these things that are so important to how you have structured your life and your business kind of slotted into place for you, right? Mm-hmm. And then I remember one of the second ones that fit into that was when we discovered and really got you to a place of owning your values and your strengths. Mm-hmm. And when we then layered those together, it was like, whoa. And so then because we had come, very, very much around to the fact that like we used the Simon Sinek, start with why. And then we used the Gallup Strengths Finder for the strengths. But when we did those 2 things and we worked through those together, I just remember you going, oh my gosh, like so much about my life, about what I'm strong in, about why I naturally do things. So instead of fighting against it, it literally became like this impetus for now I can go do this and this and this, and it makes sense. And, everything just almost started tumbling out. Yeah. At least from this side of the table looking in, it looked like it became so organic and so much easier to define at that point. So much easier to say, yeah, I think I want to rebrand because now I know this. You know what I'm saying? Did it feel that way for you? Because it sure felt this way on my side watching you.
Well, It sure did. And, if you think of it in terms of a story, like I didn't have a thesis statement before I came to you.
Right.
By the time we finished the work with Simon Sinek's Why, and, we dig deeper into that in the sense that it doesn't just apply to the business. It applies to who you are. And
Yes.
who you are is who the business is, unless there's like this giant disconnect, which will come out down the road. But having you and who you are as the main values behind the business, and understanding for me, like, so I'll share my why. The statement is having everything in order creates peace. And to me, in my personal life, everything in order makes me a peaceful person. That means having my house in order. That means having my finances in order. That means having my meal plans in order, having my schedule in order, my calendar is planned out. And then if you look at my business, what I do for clients is I go into their house and I put everything in order. So for them, they're peaceful when they walk through the door. So I don't just design homes. That's like scratching the surface of what I do.
That's the how you create peace.
That's the how for my work.
Right.
But the why behind it is because I personally and professionally believe having everything in order creates peace. And when I go out and I'm able to do that for my clients and they tear up, after they see the space and it all makes sense and it's all perfect for them. And they feel this overwhelming sense of relief when they get home, that there's nothing left to do. I think that's what motivates me too. What's left to do, and anything untied feels chaotic for me.
Right.
I feel like I can't rest until everything is done. And knowing everything is done, knowing the house is in order and everything is, just where it should be, that's what I do.
So you have done, I would say, quite a bit in a short amount of time. Granted, you've been in business in some form or fashion since 2008, but with a real intentionality maybe since maybe 2016, 2017?
Yeah, I would say that. I say that, I think 2015 is where everything started to come together. And,
okay.
My degree is in business and communication with a minor in art and media. So in a sense, everything I've ever done up to this point now makes sense. I use all of it. I use my education. I use the photography. I use, what I learned from blogging. I feel like once you get to the point in life where you can figure out what you did for and why, and finally come to a place where it all makes sense, it's a beautiful thing.
So now you also, as we talked about last year, you hired one coach and worked through her program, and then you hired me to work through some other things. What was it in general that made you even search out, like, I need a coach or I need to go somewhere when you started with the first one? Because there was something, and you got great information. You've gotten great information out of both. So not one.
Yeah, and
I'm just asking, what made you go think it's time for me to get some outside help?
Well, you know me well enough by now to know that I'm obsessed with doing better. I am constantly looking for new ways and better ways to do things. I don't like when I don't know everything about a subject. And so I will research and research and research. And I think the big black hole in my business was the finances, because I had a history of avoiding math. I had a pattern of not believing in being able to do math, which is crazy because it's just math. And I knew and connected with you like right off the bat. I knew that it was going to work when we started talking about the reverse engineering, because to me, you can't have a business without a financial plan. And I kept trying to get that in the situation I was in before and trying to create that. And I think I recently sent you an email about the ideal client. At some point, it became very clear to me that I was going to have to start outsourcing in order to grow. And there were certain skills I didn't have and I didn't know. And I'm not ashamed that I don't have and I don't know. But it was time to ask for help. And you were the next piece of the puzzle for me. But, I expected to just get a financial plan. I didn't expect to go through all this why stuff and all this,
Yeah, that's funny.
skills.
Most people come to me. So I do want to dig into that for just a second. Most
Yeah.
people come to me as a coach and they hear that I do profit first or financials, and they think, I don't know what they think, but I am guessing that they assume that the process starts with, we're just going to do math a different way to give you a different outcome. And we don't even start with math. I go all the way back and start with, tell me about your why. Tell me who you are. What are your strengths? What are your values? And it's funny because sometimes in the first couple of, even in my online coaching or in the one-to-one coaching, I can start to sense this. I'm getting a little frustrated. I hired you to help me with the numbers. And I usually say, hold on, you're going to get there. I've mentioned on other podcasts, people go, should I do my marketing plan first or my financial plan first? And I'm like, you can't do them apart. They have to go together. You do a marketing plan with numbers you don't have, it's not going to do you any good. You know, or if you do one that doesn't line up with the growth that you want to have, it's not going to do you any good. So all of these things very much go together, like your why, your mission, your vision. But when it clicks, it's like, oh my goodness, now I get, because now you have the confidence to go sell what I tell you you need to sell to make the number that you told me you want to make. You know, without that work, you miss kind of that foundational core piece that puts you in a position to charge what you need to charge to make what you need to make.
Right. And I don't think I made that connection. I don't think that I made the connection between the story, the marketing story. I feel weird saying marketing story because it really is just the heart of my business. The heart of my business.
It's actually like the company value statement. It's the company worth statement.
Right. But until I had that down, until I started working with a copywriter, Jacqueline of Ochre and Beige, who's fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, shout out to Jacqueline with Ochre and Beige.
I know. She is great. She's helped me so much on my copy. She's also helped me put together these documents that I use to send out to clients when they contact me, which, you know, then kind of launched the whole rebrand because now I was having a graphic designer work on these documents. And this all fits in with the workflow because I knew it was going to be A to B. I need to send out B, and then C needs to happen. And then I need to send out D. And, you know, it all, I can't do anything on a small scale, Michelle.
I know, but that's okay because you're not trying to build a small company. You're trying to build a firm here, right? Not necessarily some mega empire, but we are trying to build a firm so that you're not working alone and you can serve those around you. And you have done so much by, you know, and the encouragement that we want to give to those designers that are, no matter where they are, but especially those that are designing and starting, you don't have to DIY your whole business. Get help. Let people fast forward you. Find trusted people that you can delegate to. Just like you're delegating the plumbing and the electrical, find somebody that you can delegate the other pieces and parts. You don't have to delegate all of it at one time. You didn't. You started and got comfortable. And the more comfortable you got seeing that these people were working for you, you trusted, you know, handing off the next piece of that puzzle, which has just opened you up to do more and more and more and take on one of the largest projects of your career, you know, just within the last little bit. So,
yeah. And I think the other part too, that really plays into all of this is not being afraid to ask for help. Because the truth is we can no longer be the expert at everything. And if you feel like you have to be the expert at everything in order to go out and start doing this, it's just going to set you up for failure. And, you know, I don't have any clue anymore how SEO works. I am not the expert at that. I knew how that looked 10 years ago when I was blogging, but things change in the tech world. And I'm at the point where I will be able to pay somebody to help me with that versus spending 20 hours trying to figure it out.
Right.
And I think it's a misunderstanding to think that you have to be the expert at everything. But I also think on the flip side of that, you can't be so ego driven that you're unwilling to ask for help. You know, if I'm partnering with a new vendor, I'm sending an email. I've never done this with you before. I would like to know how the best way to get this done in the smoothest way possible is. Can you please help me make this a positive experience for both of us? You know, I want to get better. I want to have good relationships. And there's my number one strength, relator. I want to make sure that I'm building positive energy all over. Yeah. You know?
I do. And I love that you, we've already named your podcast. I named it, by the way. And from our pre-conversation, I know it struck. And it was that dreams can become reality. because we were talking about the fact that you said, I'm living my dream. And I said, because it's no longer a dream, it's now a reality, right? So the goals that we set late last year, you're starting to see them come to fruition and literally living it out right now, which is amazing. And we're putting that out there because you're still working a shortened day to most people's standards at 3:00 so that you can also be mom and balance the business and balance your life. And does it take a lot of work? Absolutely. Does it take a lot of planning and orchestration? You betcha. And does it take intentionality? For sure. But if we are dedicated to the outcome, we can do it. And that's what you are showing us. That is really what you're doing so very well, and getting help and realizing you don't have to do it by yourself. I've shared this before. I shared it when I was in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and I think a couple of people were shocked. And then I shared it at High Point Market. I have a business coach. Hello. I have a business coach because I don't know what I don't know.
Yes.
And if I want to get better and better and better to serve my clients, why would I sit here and just do it all by myself? Because I'm not going to be any better at it either.
Yeah.
Right? We're striving and we're learning and we're all very symbiotic here. So let's reach out and get the help that we need for the business that we desire.
Right. But reaching out for help means you're going to have to work, because just because you ask someone to help you, that means you need to provide them with all the tools to help you. And that in itself takes a lot of time and energy and focus, because nobody else was getting up at 4:30 in the morning for me to start going through your courses so I could get them done before my actual work day started. It was me sitting there taking notes.
I do want to ask you this one thing before we wrap up here, but I know you had made the comment about not wanting to do the math because it's math, and I know you're a math person. You got metrics for everything else in the world before you met me. But for some reason, the math around the financials was a little bit of a block. But I know that you also took a couple of days. You went to a hotel. You spent some time all by yourself. You worked on your business. You sent me spreadsheets out the wazoo, and you were excited about the math, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I
Did
checked
that
myself
shock you that you got excited?
Yes, because then I feel like it's a very realistic goal, and then I can keep track of it. And like my why, now it's all in order. So I can be peaceful about it. I can plug in those numbers every quarter. I know exactly where I stand. I can plug everything in year to year to year. And because, I coded the spreadsheet, so everything changes as I add numbers and subtract numbers, because I'm a crazy person like that, but not as much of a crazy person as my husband and his spreadsheets regarding our personal finances. That's probably why I checked out, is he handles a lot of our personal finances and has all the crazy spreadsheets. But I've learned how to do it along the way. I just never had to because he did. But now I get to do it on my own business. So it's a giant relief to be able to.
It's empowering. Don't you think it's empowering?
100%, because there's not a term that scares me anymore. I understand gross profit. I understand net. I understand all of these words that before used to be intimidating. When and I've been working with bookkeeper and CPA. I, used your CPA, who's been fantastic. Shout out to Christy. So it's just really nice to know that it's all there. Like all this groundwork that I've been working so hard to create, it's now there for me to use. And now it's just my job to use it, to implement it. Because I just listened to a podcast, and she was talking about plans and goals, and thinking about, your 1 year goals, your 5-year goals, your 10-year goals. And maybe your 1 year is actually just tasks. You need to create, you check this task off the list, A to B, and your 5-year goals need to be big. But if you think of where you are right now, you probably had these dreams 5 years ago, and you're living them right now. And I can tell you, I had this conversation with my designer today when we were working. A little time hop thing popped up with my son in my closet office when we were living in St. Louis. And I built the business in the closet. I didn't have an office. It was in the closet, and I put my desk there. And, 4 or 5 years ago, when I was building the automation, today, I'm sitting in my office, which is a dedicated space that I rent. This is what I was dreaming of back then. And now I'm sitting here with goals for 5 years from now, and they're there. I know what they are. I'm not going to tell you what they are because I'm working on them, but they're there. Like, I know what this can become. I have that added piece of uncertainty with the military being able to pick me up and move me wherever, which is a little bit scary. But I'm not going to let that stop me from trying.
Heck, working out of a closet, if that didn't stop you, that would stop a lot of people, right? I don't have a dedicated space. I don't have a place to spread out. I can't do this. Or I'm not a legitimate business because I'm working in the closet. And that didn't stop you. So certainly the ability to pick up and move around is not going to stop you either.
No, because, looking backwards, it all makes sense. If something happens and we have to relocate, knock on wood, there'll be a reason for that.
And we'll just pick your plan up and move it to the new location and tweak it for the new surroundings and keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I've started to work remote with clients. And as my kids get older, I foresee being able to travel a little bit more than I do now. And, there's always room to dream.
Lots of opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Shawna, as we wrap up, where can people find you? You've offered us so much great information. Where can they go out and see this beautiful new website that you're building?
So it will be on styleberrycreativeinteriors.com. We should launch at the end of May, which I think is right around the time this podcast is coming out. If it's not there yet, then you'll be looking at the watercolor one that was there before. I'm also pretty active on Instagram, and right now it's under the handle Styleberry Creative. And I also have a Pinterest, which is linked on all the websites. So
awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time that you took with us today, your transparency in sharing your journey, and just the encouragement that we can actually live our dream. Like, we can plan it and we can work towards it, and then we really can have it. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you for having me and for being such a wonderful partner in this journey.
You're welcome. I can't wait to have you back in 5 years and we can share those 5-year plans.
Same here.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much to Shawna for sharing today her journey and allowing us a glimpse into the process of streamlining and adjusting her business for scalability and for growth. If you're interested in where to go next with your business, hop on over to scarletthreadconsulting.com and click on the course roadmap under the tab courses at the top. I'm also going to put it in the show notes below. And then ask yourself a few questions and be very honest with your answer, and then take action. You can also have the business of your dreams if you're willing to work for it. Always remember, profit doesn't happen by accident.